All right. Hello, everyone, and thanks for continuing to join us throughout the day here at the Lytham Partners Spring 2024 Investor Conference. My name is Robert Blum, Managing Partner of Lytham Partners. During this presentation, we welcome Precision Optics, ticker symbol of POCI on the NASDAQ, and joining us from the company is the company's CEO, Dr. Joe Forkey. Before I do turn it over to Joe, I want to remind everyone that management is available for one-on-one meetings throughout the conference here. If you've not already scheduled your one-on-one meeting, would like to do so, shoot me an email. My email is Blum, B-L-U-M, @lythampartners.com, or you can visit the conference landing page, which is lythampartners.com/spring 2024. From there, you can click on the investor and attendee registration and make your one-on-one selection. So, Joe, with that, the floor is all yours.
Great. Thanks, Robert, and thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm really happy to be here, happy to be talking about Precision Optics Corporation. And let's jump right in. So as the name implies, Precision Optics Corporation is a company that deals with optics. We do a lot of technical optics, a lot of imaging systems and illumination systems. We're vertically integrated in the sense that we can take projects from the design phase all the way through to the mass manufacturing phase. But as a small company, we made a decision a number of years ago to be very focused in terms of the types of optics that we work in. So while we're an optics company, a technical company, we work in some very specific areas. We work in micro-optics, 3D imaging, and digital imaging, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we move forward. We also are very focused as a small company on the markets we work in, the place that has the best can make the best use of the specific technologies we've developed are mainly in medical devices. That's where we've been working for a long, long time. And we're starting to explore some areas in defense, aerospace, and I'll talk about that as we go through the slides. The company has been in business for a long time, since 1982. We've gone through a lot of ups and downs and back and forths. And I took over as CEO a little over 10 years ago. We made some critical decisions at that time, and we've been building the company with a somewhat updated business model, which I'll talk about in just a minute. But the bottom line is that the business model we've been using has had some success. You can see here that the revenue has been increasing pretty substantially over the last few years, and so we're pretty excited at the prospects for the future. The business model that we use is one where we engage with our customers early in their development process. And if the technology that we have is a good fit for the product that they're trying to make, we engage with them in an engineering process. And so we spend a lot of time developing the design and developing a design that can be manufactured using our technology. When we do that, we charge the customer for the time and materials that it takes to go through that development process. But importantly, we maintain ownership of the intellectual property that comes out of that process. And so the engineering part of the business is a profit center. Ultimately, however, we look to get these programs through the engineering process and into production. And once they go into production, then they end up staying in production typically for many, many years, especially for med device, and we're seeing for defense aerospace as well. And so the company grows by pulling more and more of these programs through the engineering pipeline and getting more and more of those programs into production. And we'll talk a little bit about what our engineering pipeline looks like today and how these programs are moving forward and into production. But you can see here in this chart, the gray area shows the engineering work that we do. You can see that that's been growing steadily. This fiscal year, which is not shown on here, the engineering has grown even more to record levels. And that's a really strong indicator of the way our market is accepting the technology that we have. And importantly, it's a strong indicator of where we believe the production revenue will go in the future. And you can see, along with the engineering work increasing, you can see that the manufacturing work, which is shown in blue, has also been increasing steadily. You can see in 2021, the manufacturing work declined slightly, but the engineering picked up more than that, so that we had still a growth year from 20 to 21. That was during the pandemic. And during the pandemic, not surprisingly, some of our medical devices slowed down that we were producing, but our customers were very anxious to keep the development work going as fast as possible. And so that's why the engineering continued to grow as well. We also have made a couple of acquisitions over the last 5 years, a company called Ross Optical and Lighthouse Imaging. I'll mention them in another slide, but they also have contributed to some of the growth here. The growth from 22 to 23, importantly, was essentially entirely internal organic growth. Okay, so we have 3 different areas that we focus on in our technology. So the first is the area of micro-optics. We make some of the world's smallest individual optics that have ever been made. We make some individual components, some individual prisms that are as small as 50 microns, 50 microns. This is about the width of a human hair. So it's very, very small. We can also make micro-optical systems like this camera that's shown here on the side of a dime. This camera is 1 millimeter. And this is the entire camera. It has the lens and the sensor and everything in it. You see some wires coming out of the back. We make some other imaging systems that are as small as 300 microns. So again, just slightly larger than the size of a human hair. These very small optics obviously can get into small places in the body, and we'll talk about what the applications are in just a minute. 3D imaging is the second area that we have a particular technical focus on. This is really the ability to make 3D endoscopes. And this is technology that was developed originally way back in the late 90s when we built the first 3D imaging systems for Intuitive Surgical. Today, the market for traditional rigid endoscopes has really become a commodity market. There are lots of companies who can make good, high-quality rigid endoscopes. There are very few companies who can make good, high-quality 3D imaging systems. And the reason for that is that, without going into all the technical details, the specifications for the individual imaging channels on a 3D imager are orders of magnitude tighter than they are for a traditional 2D imager. And the reason for that is that you present 2 different images to the 2 different eyes of the surgeon. And if you make a poorly performing 3D endoscope, the surgeon's brain will accommodate the differences in the images that are coming to the 2 eyes, but you'll end up with a screaming headache after about 15 minutes and never want to use it again. So because of all of that, the specifications for 3D endoscopes are much, much tighter, and therefore there are very few companies in the world who can make these. These endoscopes are predominantly used for robotic surgery. And so as the robotic surgery market grows, that's an opportunity for us in the 3D imaging area. The third area that we focus on is in the area of digital imaging. And so this is an ability to take the image sensors as they get smaller and smaller from companies like OmniVision, with whom we have a very close working relationship and good partnership with, being able to take these very small imagers and put them often at the distal end of endoscopes, and then to be able to process the images, which now are in electronic form, as they come back out of the body, as they go through the consoles, and as they get presented up on the screen. So being able to do the digital imaging allows us to build entire imaging systems. Combining the digital imaging capability with the 3D imaging capability and the micro-optics capability now allows us to design and to manufacture entire systems, from the illumination on the system, to the imaging on the system, to the transmission as electrons on the imaging system, to processing the image while it's an electrical image, to formulating it so it can be displayed on the display. So we can do that entire thing now, which is a great benefit to our customers, and has given us a significant competitive advantage in the marketplace. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about our key markets. So as I mentioned before, medical device has been the main market that we've been working in for many years. The 3 technology areas have sort of different applications in medical device. The micro-precision optics really allow us to design and to build products that can go to places in the body that historically you couldn't go to. The great example that we always like to use is an endoscope that we make that's only a few hundred microns in diameter, that's small enough to go through the blood vessel. We make this for a company that makes a cardiac surgery procedure. And so the endoscope can go through the blood vessel into the inside of the beating heart, so that the surgeon can watch the inside wall of the beating heart while they're doing cardiac ablation in order to cure atrial fibrillation. And so this is a great example of where the size of the endoscope is not just a little bit better than what you would have if you had a slightly larger endoscope. It really is enabling. If the endoscope isn't small enough to get through the blood vessel with the other tools that the surgeon needs, you just can't do this procedure. And so those are the kinds of places where our micro precision optics and our micro precision imaging systems have great benefit to the medical device world. So you can think of other places in the body where the incision size is really critical, things like the eyeball or ophthalmology, ear, nose, and throat, cardiac, I already mentioned in the example, spine, brain, cystoscopy, urology. Those are the kinds of places where the very small endoscopes that we make have the best value and the best benefit. It also turns out to be the place where a lot of the next generation procedures are being developed, in part because the technology wasn't there to be able to get the kind of imaging that you'd like to be able to do all the procedures that you could. So there's a lot of applications for the micro precision optics in those particular areas inside the body, inside of endoscopy. For the 3D endoscopes, I already mentioned the real application here is to support next generation robotic systems. Not every robotic system needs a 3D endoscope, but many of the systems that are the sort of whole body systems, like the intuitive surgical systems, need 3D endoscopes because they're moving the surgeon away from the body. And so having the 3D perception helps the surgeons, even while they're working remotely through the computer, through the robot, to be able to better understand where their tools are and how they perform their procedures. So as the robotic surgery market is growing, so too are the applications for our 3D endoscopes. So that's really the place where we can use the 3D endoscopes, where we see a market for the 3D endoscopes. And then finally, on the digital imaging side, I already mentioned the fact that the digital imaging capability allows us now not only to do the front end of the endoscopic systems where you're forming the image or where you're putting the illumination into the body, but now we can do the back end where we're doing the image processing on the electronics boards and preparing the image to go up onto the display screen. So this allows us now to address the full medical device system that our customers need and to design and build the entire image train, the entire system for the endoscopic procedure. The other thing that digital imaging has really allowed us to get into is the single-use endoscope market. And so there are some great benefits to being able to go to single-use. A number of people, ourselves included, have been interested in making single-use endoscopes that can be used once and then discarded for many, many years. The technology has not been there until recently, but now it really is. And so the market is moving in that direction. The great benefit of having a single-use endoscope, of course, is that you virtually eliminate the possibility of cross-contamination from one patient to another that can happen if you have an endoscope that's not fully sterilized in between. And so there are other benefits to single-use endoscopes. At the end of the day, the single-use endoscope market is growing at some 2 to 3 times the rate of the endoscope market in general, which itself is growing at a 5 to 10% annual growth rate. So there's great opportunity in the single-use endoscope part of the market, and being able to engage with the digital imaging technology that we have has allowed us to get into that area in a much more significant way. We actually announced just a couple of weeks ago the biggest order ever for our company and the first ever order for single-use endoscope manufacturing. And so, again, this is an area that we see as a great growth area, and it's the digital imaging technology that allows us to get into that. I already mentioned that we are exploring an expansion of our sales and marketing efforts into the defense and aerospace community. As a small company, we made a decision a number of years ago that we would be very focused in our sales and marketing efforts with a limited budget and limited bandwidth of people. And so we really focused all of our outward marketing on the medical device space because that's where we saw the best applications and the best opportunities. An interesting thing happened, which is that a number of defense aerospace customers, seeing us at some of the major optics trade shows, saw what we were doing and they came to us. Now, our sales team still did a great job of vetting those leads and pursuing them. But at the end of the day, we've ended up with a number of fairly significant customers with fairly significant orders in the defense aerospace market. In fact, 2 of them we made announcements about in the last 3 or 4 weeks, where we've had substantial follow-on orders for a couple of programs that are already in production. So it's pretty clear to us that there are some applications here. We're being careful not to try and do everything for everyone. We still have loads of opportunity in the medical device space, but in general, what we found is that there is a big effort in the defense aerospace market to reduce size, weight, and power. They call this SWAP in the industry. And so reducing size and weight is right in line with the kinds of things that we're doing with our micro optics and our digital imaging to be able to get systems smaller and smaller. So we've gone far enough to recognize that there are some subsegments within the aerospace and defense market where the small size and some of the things we're doing seem to have a direct application. This is in the area of satellite communications, where you want things to be small so you can lift them into orbit. Similarly, with drones, you have to get it off the ground, and so having smaller size and weight for your cameras has great advantage. And then it turns out there are some places in directed energy weapons or laser weapons where there are fiber optic systems which are quite small that are used, and those systems require very small lenses and optics, and so we see that there are some applications there. So again, we've sort of looked at the defense aerospace market on an opportunistic way historically, and we're starting to look more carefully at how we can address this in a more aggressive and deliberate way. Very briefly, I've already mentioned this sort of in passing, but one of the things that is very attractive to our customers is that we're vertically integrated and can help them with the development of their project from the design phase all the way through to mass manufacture. So we have our own optics shop, we have our own machine shop, we can fabricate components internally to move through the development cycle very quickly. Because our design team and our manufacturing team are all in one company, we're designing for manufacturing the entire time. We have our own quality and regulatory group, so we can help our customers and support them as they go to the FDA or to the European equivalent, or the equivalents in Japan or China, wherever else. So we can help them with the regulatory piece, and then we can engage with the full manufacturer when they get to production. So it's really a one-stop shop, and we've heard from our customers that this has great value to them. Similar to our technical integration, which allows us to do the entire imaging system from the illumination all the way through to putting the image up on the display. So these kinds of complete ability to satisfy the requirements for our customer is a strong competitive advantage, and part of what our customers really find of value in us. This slide is a slide that depicts our engineering pipeline. So I mentioned right at the beginning that our business model is to bring programs into our engineering pipeline and then work with our customers as we go through the design phase and then put them into production once the design is completed. You can see that there are a number of mature legacy products on that top line. These are products that have been in production for over a decade. In one case, over 2 decades, with the same product to a major medical device company whose names everyone would recognize. There are then 5 programs that are more recently in production. 3 of those have been in production for a number of years. They slowed down during the pandemic, but are all back close to full strength now. The next 2 labeled optics components and laparoscope, those are 2 programs that went into production in the last year and are fueling some of the growth in the second half of our fiscal year, which runs July 1st to June 30th. So we're in that second half now. Those 2 programs have helped to increase our revenues in the latter half of the year. And then you see there are 4, there are 2 after that, and then 2 after that that sort of cascade down to the left. Those next 4 programs, from the micro endoscope down to the ophthalmic scanning device, those are programs that are very close to going into production. 2 of them already have made submissions to the FDA. The other 2, we expect submissions in the next couple of months. So these 4 we expect will be in production in the next 6 to 12 months. And then it continues on from there down to the ones that are just going into the development stage down at the bottom, the boroscope and arthroscope number 3. Those 2 actually just came into the engineering pipeline in the last couple of months. So importantly, what we're doing here is we're continuing to move programs through the engineering pipeline. The number of programs here is as large as it has ever been. This is what's fueled the increase in engineering revenue over the last couple of years. And again, consistent with the business model, we want to be pushing out a couple of these every year. And importantly, like these 2 that I just mentioned at the bottom, we want to be pulling in new programs into the front end of the engineering pipeline as quickly as we're pulling programs out into production. And we've been quite successful with that. Without going into a lot of detail, I'll just mention that we've made 2 acquisitions over the last 4 or 5 years. Our attitude towards acquisitions is the following. The optics industry is quite fragmented, so we believe that there are opportunities for acquisitions, but we are not pursuing a roll-up strategy. Any acquisition that we look at, any acquisition that we engage with will have to satisfy 3 criteria that we have. The first is that it has to expand the technical capability or the business capability of the company. It has to fit with what we're already doing. Needs to either deepen an existing capability or broaden the capabilities in a sort of progressive way so that we can offer more to our customers. So it has to make sense from a technical standpoint. Secondly, of course, it has to make sense from a financial standpoint. I'm glad to say both of these have borne out from a financial standpoint. And then thirdly, as a small company, we have to be sure that the cultures match. And again, in both of these cases, we've done very well. These 2 companies were acquired for very different reasons, but they have integrated into our overall corporation in a very positive way and have been very successful. So we'll continue to look for acquisitions as we go forward. And if we find ones that fit, we'll continue moving forward with those. Finally, the go-forward strategy. So I've already mentioned a bunch of these things. Let me just tick them off sort of all in one place. So advanced pipeline projects to commercialization. We're having great success with that. And importantly, we're backfilling the pipeline with new programs coming in. Expand the pipeline with new development programs, what I just said, right? So those last 2 on that last slide are doing exactly that. And we're in a good place now. We have more programs, more customers who are coming to us that want us to work in their programs than we can do. We're expanding the engineering team as quickly as we can. But this means that we should be able to continue to grow and fill the pipeline as we move forward. We're always looking to drive efficiencies, improve margins on the currently commercialized products. A lot of that will happen as we increase the volume of production products and we better utilize some of our resources. But we're always looking to continue to improve on the manufacturing side. We continue to take some of our profits and put those back into technology development. We are a technology company at the end of the day, so we're always looking to develop the next generation technology to expand the capabilities in the areas that we already have, and importantly, to develop the IP in order to allow us to compete with those technologies, which ultimately are really the product that we're selling. We have been making significant investments in a disciplined way as a small company in sales and marketing as well as engineering. So I told you that our sales and marketing team is a little broader now. We can start to look at adjacent markets like defense aerospace. And I told you that our engineering pipeline is saturated. We're adding engineers as quickly as we can find well-qualified engineers. And so we've been making investments there because those 2 things really are the things that drive the front end of the sales process, the sales funnel, and then the process as the programs move through the engineering pipeline. And then finally, as I already mentioned, we will look for strategic acquisitions on an opportunistic basis to grow the company faster whenever we can. Let me run through some of the financials very quickly here. I'm happy to talk in the one-on-one sessions in a lot more detail with anyone who would like to do that. So the chart on the left, we've already looked at. This is showing the revenue growth over the last 7-8 years. On the right, you can see the year-over-year revenue for the third quarter, which is our January to March quarter. You can see that year-over-year it was slightly higher. Those of you who look carefully will see that the first part of our fiscal year was a little lower. We had a couple programs that had stalled because we filled their inventory. They'll be back to us in a year or 2. We had one program that went away because they did a redesign that didn't use our products. But the first half of the fiscal year was a little lower. The second half of the fiscal year is coming back strong, and this is a good indication of that. Q3 was up quarter over quarter. Gross margins were up in the third quarter. You can see we've been hovering in the mid-30s for the last number of years. We expect this to get higher and get to our target margins of 40% and higher as we get better utilization of our manufacturing resources as we have more programs go into production. Adjusted EBITDA, which is EBITDA, standard EBITDA with stock-based compensation taken out as well. You can see that for the most recent quarter, we were just above break even at about 50,000. And we expect to be growing more profitably as we see the top line grow as well. This is all the details for anyone who would like to look at it. Our balance sheet was in good shape at the end of March. We had about $1 million in cash. We have some long-term debt. We had $400,000 that we had borrowed against our line of credit, but still had another 800 and something thousand on the line of credit. We use the line of credit as we need to. We had paid it off. We're back into it. So we use that as a means of managing working capital as it's intended to be. So the balance sheet is in good shape. With that, I will wrap up the prepared comments. And Robert, I'm happy to have any conversation we'd like.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, we got just a couple of minutes here. So I really want to dive and make sure that folks that may be a little bit newer to the story understand really the importance of the early May announcement, the $9 million production order for the single-use cystoscopy program there. Sort of help people understand, I mean, it was a record order. It was the largest order that you've ever had. It was into an area that has high growth capabilities. Just talk a little bit more and some detail about that and what it means for the company going forward.
Yeah, sure. It's a great accomplishment. It's a great milestone for the company. A lot of people have worked for a long time, very hard to get to that milestone. So it's a $9 million order, as you mentioned. It's broken up into a couple $1 million for the first fiscal year, and then it goes up to about $4.5 for the second fiscal year, and then continues after that. The customer we're working with on this product is doing very well themselves with the product that's in the market already, and getting great response. So we believe this will continue for a long period of time, and that there's opportunity for growth even in the near term, even while this order is being filled. The other reason, even beyond the size of the order, which of course is important, that makes this order particularly relevant to the story of the company and the future of the company, is that it's, as I mentioned in the slide deck, it's the first production order for a single-use product for Precision Optics Corporation. And so we've been working on single-use products for the last 4 or 5 years. It takes a little while to get through the engineering pipeline, but this order really demonstrates to the whole world that POC is capable of taking these single-use programs through the development process, and then importantly, getting them over the finish line, if you like, into production, which is critical for ourselves and for our customers. So we're particularly interested in the single-use market because there are lots of studies that show that the single-use market is growing at 2 to 3 times the rate of the reusable medical market. And so there are lots of customers who come to us today asking for single-use programs. So from a sort of holistic standpoint, what this says is that POC can not only do the reusable endoscopes that we've been making for decades, but also we're right there on the forefront of the technology to be able to support our customers who want to go to single use. So now we really are in a position to be able to work on any imaging system for medical device that any customer would want. And so that makes us very unique in the market and really helps us to become the go-to player for the medical device industry for medical device imaging systems.
Thank you for that, Joe. Maybe last sort of comment here, and you touched on it a little bit, but for, again, those that maybe weren't able to listen to your year-end conference call, for Q1, you did 4.3 million, Q2, 4.8 million, Q3, then 5.2 million, sort of the stair-step approach, which you guys really foreshadowed at the beginning of the year and said that this was kind of the way things would play themselves out. What should that mean for Q4 and really as you head into next year with the aforementioned order that you just received?
Yeah, sure. So I'll be quick to say we don't give formal guidance, but we have talked for a long time, as you mentioned, Robert. We talked even at the beginning of the fiscal year that this was our expectation for this year. We had a couple of programs that pulled back at the end of the last fiscal year. And so we anticipated that the first half of this fiscal year would be a little lower in the revenue, but we also could see that there were some programs that were coming out of the engineering pipeline, and we could see that this single-use program was making good progress, and we anticipated that we would see an order of the nature of the one that we just announced a couple of weeks ago. We could see that was coming. So we've been consistent through the whole year of talking about the fact that the first half of the fiscal year would be a little weaker but that it would grow as we move through, and that the second half would be back to the levels that we saw the previous year, and that it would continue and we'd grow from there. So in terms of expectations, we have programs that are coming out of the engineering pipeline. We have a couple that just came out. We have a couple more that we expect are coming out. I've already talked about the fact that we have plenty of programs that are coming in to the engineering pipeline. So the engineering revenue should stay strong, and in the manufacturing revenue, we expect to continue to grow as we move forward. In terms of the specifics of Q4 and Q1 and Q2, with these new programs coming online, there's always going to be some, some question of exactly when certain deliveries will happen, whether they happen at the end of June or the beginning of July. But the bottom line is we expect overall for the revenue levels to continue to grow, basically quarter to quarter, but certainly year over year.
Fantastic, Joe. We'll go ahead and we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for the time here today. Again, just want to remind everyone that if you've not scheduled your one-on-one meeting with management and would like to do so, shoot me an email. Again, that's Blum, B-L-U-M, @lythampartners.com, or again, visit the website, lythampartners.com/spring 2024. From there, you can go ahead and make your one-on-one selection. So again, as always, Joe, thank you very much for the time today.
Thanks, Robert. Thank you all for joining us.